beautiful as the day I lost you.
It's safe to say the past few days have certainly been a roller coaster for Persona fans. After well over a year of speculation dating back to at least the beginning of the Persona anniversary celebration, remember when we thought that was going to be good? And a very damning leaked video of the project back in April, the long-awaited Persona 3 remake was finally unveiled at Xbox's latest showcase. Or at least it would have been if it wasn't accidentally spoiled 2 days earlier via Atlus's official Instagram right after Summer Game Fest.
There's a leak in the boat!
Persona 3 Reload, as it's now officially known, has garnered a very strong response from the general public, to say the least. On the one hand, it's great to finally see this long-desired and speculated remake come to pass, as folks have been calling for a remake of P3 for many years now, but on the other hand, oh, we'll fucking get to it. Now, this video's not gonna be me just bashing this remake, or P3 in general, because truth be told, I'm very excited for this game. I think Reload looks legitimately fantastic, getting a massive facelift from the original PS2 version, already apparent gameplay improvements learned from P4 and 5, super clean animations, that fucking menu, man, Jesus Christ. And overall just appears to be a very slick and polished experience, making it one of my most anticipated games of 2024 and will undoubtedly be the optimal way to play Persona 3 going forward. But notice how I said optimal and not definitive. Yeah, this is where the wheels start to fall off. See, shortly after the showcase where the game was revealed, Reload's producer Ryota Nitsuma and chief director Kazuhisa Wada stated in an interview with IGN that Reload was going to be a remake specifically of the original version of Persona 3, not either of the enhanced re-releases, FES or Portable. And upon that news, you could collectively hear the sound of Persona fans praising Atlus's name to wanting them clubbed in the head with a blunt instrument. For those who don't know, which is likely most of you, but fuck it, Persona 3 has had an ever-present reputation over the years of never having a truly definitive version of the game. See, most modern Persona games usually get an updated re-release that can do anything from making quality of life improvements to adding and reworking entire characters and segments of the story at large. Personas 4 and 5 both received versions like this, that being Golden and Royal respectively, and while there are some minute differences that may lean one to somewhat prefer the original version, more so with 4 than 5, these two are generally considered the superior versions of their games and should be the versions one should play if you want to experience them. Persona 3 also received one of those updated versions, but the problem was it didn't really update enough, and then another version came out a few years later, and that's how you get this shitting mess. P3 is interesting when it comes to public opinion. Unlike 4 and 5, which, barring personal differences from person to person, are pretty universally accepted as well-made, enjoyable games, the oldest of the modern Persona series has definitely shown its age. You'll either get people who swear by P3 as one of the greatest games ever made, or you hear it talked down as an ultimately important game, but one horribly dragged down by terrible design decisions of the time. And I am somewhat in the middle on this. I often describe Persona 3 as a masterpiece damaged by 1,000 cuts. There's very evidently a true gem of a video game in here that shines through, but that shine is heavily dulled by all the major nags that add up over time. It takes what very well could be a 10 out of 10 game to what I personally would say is just a strong 7 out of 10 game. And obviously Atlus sees this too, because this game has gotten 3, soon to be 4, separate leases on life, and while almost all have merit, none can truly stand out as the perfect example to fully bring out P3's potential. So let's just go over each version. Original Persona 3, no. This is the one version of P3 that no one should ever go back to. It's way too archaic, it doesn't have any improvements from the later versions, and it's the source of all the major design flaws that drag the title down in the first place. An RPG was released in 2006 where you can't control your party members. I just fucking... A year later, Persona 3 FES came out, and things got at least a little better, with a number of major and minor changes across the board. These include things such as new personas being added, several social links were changed, Aegis was given social links outright after not having them originally, and both a hard mode and multiple new quests were included, just to name a few. And of course, there was the big addition, that being The Answer, an entirely new epilogue mini-campaign taking place after the events of the main story. Which, divisive opinions on it aside, that is still a very notable bonus. All of these made FES a surefire improvement over the OG, but it was far from perfect, as many of the original design flaws were still present, such as not controlling party members. Seriously, who the actual fuck thought that was a good idea? The fatigue function making grinding overly annoying, and Tartarus as a dungeon just being too samey and uninteresting for people. This got complicated, however, when 2 years later, another version of the game was released for the PSP, this time called Persona 3 Portable. Portable made a number of changes that make it many people's preferred version of the game, but also just as many see it as a weird and awkward alteration. Firstly, this version finally added the ability to control your party members, thank fuck, along with a number of other quality of life improvements to the overall game. And most notably, this version allows you to pick an alternate female protagonist compared to the male-only paths of OG and FES, with the female MC having entirely new social links and dialogue options, making it a genuine worthwhile new playthrough for those who had played the game prior. Sadly, however, this version ain't all sunshine and rainbows. Not only is Portable completely missing the Answer epilogue from FES, but due to going from the PS2 to the PSP, the presentation was compromised greatly. The previous version's anime cutscenes were now all made in-engine and heavily compressed, as well as there being no actual overworld or 3D modeled characters outside of Tartarus, with now all exploration and story interactions being bogged down to simple menu selections and character portraits, making the game almost become more of a visual novel in many regards. This content and presentation clash is why to this day Persona fans still argue nearly 15 years later whether FES or Portable is the best way to play P3. It was even hotly contested when Atlus chose Portable to be the version ported to modern platforms over FES. All of this is why fans have been so insistent on a ground-up remake of Persona 3 for years, especially after how strong Persona 5 was gameplay-wise. It was obvious how much Atlus had learned and could apply to an older title. And while that is seemingly coming to fruition now, Atlus decided to pull an Atlus and isn't making Reload the total package everyone wanted. Now, it should be stressed that this statement isn't entirely true of it being just a remake of OG P3, as we've already gotten confirmation that additions made from FES will still be included. So it's more just referring to the biggest chunks of content from the later versions, those being The Answer and FemC, as being omitted from Reload. It's nice to know that they're keeping the general improvements, but not going all the way with merging all the content just feels like a boneheaded move, whether it be out of sheer laziness, disinterest, or lack of commitment, because again, the driving reason why so many people wanted this remake in the first place was to merge all the different versions' content into one copy. And look, yes, I know The Answer has incredibly split opinions on it, with many outright hating it, but if that's the case, why not, remake it? The whole point of a remake being to take something and make it better? This ain't rocket science, people. It also now just feels like Atlus slapped out the Portable release on modern systems just as a way to placate people about FemC. Like, hey, don't worry, you can still play as her in this version, despite the fact that you'll be playing as her in an extremely handicapped version of the game that as a full experience won't even compare to Reload. It all just feels exhausting because after years of asking for it, here we are, again, with a version of P3 that will ultimately still be good, but one we can only call the strongest version of the game and not the definitive version. Fans have grown so tired, some have unfavorably compared Reload to BDSP, which even as someone who enjoys that game, oh boy. While the comparison is kind of ham-fisted, as Reload clearly has way more effort put into it than BDSP, it's also not really an unfounded comparison, as it's yet another remake that, for some baffling reason, decides to omit extra elements from a later version, making it feel lesser in some regards. And it sucks, because I want to preface that P3 Reload still looks fantastic on its own merits, and looks to be more than worth the purchase. But we're staring down a reality where this one game has 4 separate incarnations, and none of them can be called the complete package, which is, a little frustrating. This is also more than likely Persona 3's last chance for something like this. Atlus isn't gonna do another version of this game again with how high budget Reload is looking, unless they go crazy for the game's 50th anniversary or something, if Atlus and the game industry are even still around by then. So there's a very real possibility this ultimate version of P3 will only ever be a pipe dream. It feels like the best case scenario at this point would be Atlus seeing the backlash to all of this and making the Answer and FemC DLC at a later date. That could still feasibly be possible considering how much effort it would take to remake these chunks of P3, especially FemC with all her different dialogue options. But the key thing to note here is that these changes should not come from re-releasing a whole other version of this remake a year later for full price. Pulling that shit with a remake would be a whole new level of fuck off. No matter what may come after all this discourse, I'll still be excited for Reload, but I do genuinely hope Atlus gets the message here. We want Persona 3 to be the best it possibly can be in one version, and it can't be that even with what we've seen from this remake without all the content from every version. It's in everyone's best interest, developer and fan, to finally make this game the full masterpiece it's always had the potential to be. Also, please give Persona 1 and 2 remakes like this in the future. Their fans are literally starving.
Just once! Please, oh please let me win one time!